Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast, the podcast that is passing wisdom to the next generation of athletes, coaches, and parents to transform leaders on and off the court. In our conversation today, we get the opportunity and privilege to interview Jeffery Johnson. Jeffery is a motivational speaker and also the founder of Crowned Basketball Academy. He is also a basketball trainer. So in our conversation today, I'm not going to lie, this might be one of my favorite conversations I've ever had on the Bridging Impact Podcast. We talk about the importance of physical literacy, how and why to coach basketball or coach sports, and how to really coach and make an impact that it goes well beyond just the sport itself and so much more. So without further ado, let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the Bridging Impact Podcast, Jeff. I am thrilled to have our conversation today, talking some hoops, talking leadership, and talking about how we can impact the next generation of youth. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. When I saw the reels on your page, I said, man, this guy gets it. Like, did he just become my new best friend? Yes.
I know. And right from there, I was just like, all right, I got to get you on the show. It resonates, and this is what it's all about. So diving right into it, the first question we like to ask is, what kind of impact has sports made in your life?
So honestly, I'm from Memphis, and sports kept me off the streets. Like, it kept me out of trouble. It kept me into something that's disciplined, that's consistent, and it kept me from getting all kind of trouble here in my hometown. So I used it to kind of help other kids do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. And, it gives you that opportunity that after school time, it fills your day, right? Because, if you don't have sports, I don't know what you'd really do after school, because it's, especially as teenagers, right? It's so easy to, be able to, find yourself in places where you really shouldn't be. And because your brain's still developing, you don't really know any better. And so can you talk a little bit, about what your experience with sports is? You play in high school, you play, middle school, and you play in college. Like, what was that like? And what kind of, what coaches did you have that were influential on you?
Yeah, so I didn't start playing organized basketball until the 8th grade, which is kind of late for a person to try to really make a career out of sports. I played 8th grade. It was my first year. I did pretty good. Just didn't have any skill. I had athleticism, but I didn't have skill. So my hustle helped me make more teams. So next year I got a little more skill, and we won a championship my freshman year in high school. And that propelled me to a pretty decent high school career. I started on varsity for the next 3 years, and I had a couple offers, but I just wasn't really confident in those offers. So I ended up retiring from basketball when I graduated high school and went to a liberal arts school with no sports. And it wasn't until my second year there I saw my teammates and rivals on TV and in the tournaments, and they're showing me their tournament paraphernalia and gifts and everything. And I was just like, you're living out our dream. Like, why am I not playing right now? Like, what's wrong with me? And I transferred to Mississippi State, and I tried out, walked on, and man, just the entire world opened up for me. I went to school to be a coach and a teacher already, but when I played, I saw the inside business of college athletics. And when I graduated, I started training. And I thought training was just going to keep me around the sport, like keep me in shape, keep me sharp so that I can try out for pro. And I did not know that I could incorporate all of my teaching education into training, and it just took off when I graduated. So I actually just finally went to Spain to play pro last year, and that's a whole story. We're gonna have to dive into that one.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
That's awesome. I think it's really cool that you didn't let that decision that you made right out of high school that I'm gonna retire affect you forever, right? You're like, all right, maybe I'm seeing people that I played with, and I think I can still play with them, and that you were able to walk on and have that experience. I'm curious because you talked about learning about the business of college sports, and I'd love to know a little bit more about what kind of some of those learnings were like.
Yeah. So one of the biggest lessons I had to come face reality with is the coaches, each coach has a certain number of kids that they recruit, and they are primarily focused on that specific group of kids. Even though they're for the whole team, each coach has their own core group of guys that they recruited, which directly is correlated to their job security, right? If their kids are producing, then they have a job, right? I didn't know that then. So I would see certain coaches only grabbing certain players, and it was weird. Like, how come he's not grabbing him and he's not grabbing me? And it was just a weird dynamic. And um, they are investing in those kids, so they expect those kids to produce, right? And as a walk on, my mentality was, dude, go in there and kill everybody on the court and take somebody's spot. But I didn't understand that dynamic. Like, yeah, Jeff, you can do well and earn a spot, but you're not taking his spot, right? Like, that's not quite how it works. You know what I mean? And I ran into some issues with my, I call it cockiness now. Thought I was confident, but it was arrogance. Like, no, if I do well, I deserve his spot. That's not quite the case. So it took some humbling for me to understand that. Like, it's literally business. Like, if these coaches don't do well with these players, then they're not gonna have a job next season. All right. So yeah, yeah. And we actually have one coach who survived like 4 coaching staffs because he's a super like great recruiter, right? Like, his kids like do well, and it just makes sense. You know, it's a money machine. And I went to state with Dak Prescott, and this was before the NIL deals. So I was a year older than him, and he played, and he took us to #1 in the country. And I saw how college athletics can influence the economy of a city, right? It blew my mind. They started, because we went #1, they our freshman enrollment blew up. So everybody wanted to go to Mississippi State when Dak took us to #1 in the country. And they started building apartment complexes and condos specifically because of the enrollment for the freshmen. So the city grew off of what the football program was doing. I said, "Oh my goodness, sports can really impact things, right?" And when I graduated and I had the name Mississippi State behind me now, I saw that people trusted me. It was like branding. Like, people, because I played at that school, that's all they needed to know was, oh, the social proof is there. He played at a certain place. I want my kid to play there, even though they didn't really know who I was, right? It didn't matter.
Yeah,
So,
that's really interesting. I actually came across a video earlier this week that I'm actually sharing on the Bridging Impact page this week. So maybe you'll be able to see it. Is Buzz Williams at Texas A&M, I believe, talking
mhm.
about that. The game of basketball again is about the business is winning, right? The basketball is the
Mhm.
game, but the business is winning, kind of like what you're talking
Yeah.
about. And I kind of knew a little bit about, that, like, if a recruit is technically like an asset in the business, right? And they want that
Mhm.
asset to, produce wins. But just the way you kind of talked about it kind of has given me an interesting perspective on it. And I'm curious how you use that experience and now teach that to kids, about just the game of basketball. And you also have that experience with European basketball and US basketball. So there's a lot I kind of want to dive in, but
Mhm.
focusing one question at a time is,
Yeah.
that experience helped you go and play abroad. And so would you say the biggest difference between, like European and American basketball is?
So I think, although we created the sport, Europeans play it a lot better because we focus on individual highlights and individual stats, individual, branding so much, but they focus on the club, the team, because it's so embedded in their communities, right? I played in Valencia, Spain, and they have a pro team. They have a bunch of teams there. Side note, they have multiple leagues, multiple divisions, multiple clubs in the same city. We only have the NCAA, NAIA, JUCO level, and then pro. but they have like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 levels of pro in their countries, right? So the amount of space or roster spots in the U.S. is so small compared to Europe, right? So let's say a guy like me that played D1 8 years ago, I have a better chance on making a club, second tier club or third tier or fourth tier in a different country than I do with the G League or the NBA here. So that's one of the biggest things. But then two, they focus on movement more than I don't want to say skill, like individual skill. Every person on the roster can do multiple things well, right? So a lot of the offense starts through the big man at the top of the key instead of the point guard, right? So the point guard will bring the ball down, but it's initiated through the big at the top of the key. So the big must know how to do a dribble handoff, must know how to turn a corner and attack the basket, must know how to pass, right? Must know how to catch and shoot. That's what the bigs all have to know, those movements, right? Our bigs are taught primarily low post or flash to the high post. They're not taught to initiate an offense. I was like, man, that is so interesting how the point guard would make a pass to the big at the top of the key and leave, and then the big starts it. He dribbles into a back door or a handoff or a pick and roll. And it's like, wow, like the big has a lot of autonomy with that. You see what I'm saying? But instead over here, it's the guards. So another thing that's interesting is guards play defense 94 feet. 90, you got to pick up. You have to pick up 94 feet. There's no backpedaling to half court. there's none of that. You got to know how to pass. And when Luka Doncic came out and said it's easier to score in the NBA than it is in Europe, he was not joking. It is so tough because everybody is so compact and like shifting and rotating. Like the NBA is so open when you look at it. It's a lot of opportunity for one-on-one in the NBA. You can't even stand in the paint long, and there's certain doubling rules. Like no, like you protect the basket in Europe, and everybody running guns. it's like they have what they call like lead big man, where if you don't get the rebound, you're like rim running. Like that is a huge priority. Like bigs get out and run and try to beat everybody down the floor. That's a shift. And what I was taught here is like the guards get back first, right? The guards are the first to go. No, it's the bigs. It's backwards.
Yeah. So everything's different.
It is different, man. And of course you got American guys that go over there and can still do really, really well. But they want, and I had to learn this the hard way, they want you to play American style within a European system.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Yeah. Instead of playing American style in an American system. So it's like multiple passes, cuts, everybody's moving, and then you can go be that super flashy. Yeah, you know what I mean? But it doesn't start like that.
That's kind of interesting.
You know?
So I think, one of the things, right, getting back to my previous question is, taking these learnings that you took from the game of basketball in Europe, mm-hmm. and also just the college basketball experience of kind of learning the business side of how it works here in America. Mm-hmm. I'm curious how you now teach that and train young athletes and kind of get them to understand and have like a, like you say, like a holistic, kind of approach to mm-hmm. their player development.
Absolutely. So I teach them positionless. So I teach them specific positions, and then I teach them to become positionless, meaning I can put all of them in any spot on the court, and they all should have a solid foundation of all the movement patterns. So I was an art student in college and a PE student / coaching major, and I found that there's a correlation between art and sports that isn't talked about, and I'm gonna like really put it out there to the world. Like if you look at the fundamentals of sports, you have movement, you have fitness, you have coordination, you have focus, concentration. All of these things are also in art, and basketball can be considered an art form. If you don't have the movement patterns to do a certain skill, you can't complete that activity, right? So if you can't successfully extend your arms from an L into a follow through, if your muscles aren't moving in that range to allow you to do that, how can you expect to shoot a jump shot like Stephen Curry? Like if you physically can't stay in a squatted position for more than 3 seconds and your quads are burning, how can you expect to play defense 94 feet from the basket? Right. So it's literally breaking down the movement patterns, the art of moving in a certain way, of having a certain fitness level to do the skill. And when the kids know that, it takes the pressure off them being good or bad or not. It's like, no, it's not that you're good or bad. It's just your body, you're not moving in a certain way to complete a certain skill. Because all of this is learned behavior. We weren't born basketball players. We all had to learn how to move and act and think like a basketball player. So it takes the pressure off kids. Like, look, first of all, your identity isn't in how well you play basketball or not. Like your identity was created before you were born. Like you're special. You have value. You have worth. And even if you never play a second of basketball, as your coach and trainer, I still love you. Like I value you. And then my kids, they do well because they know that I'm on their side. I'm not using them to advance my career. And I have this saying, I don't own you. I don't own any of the athletes I train, right? Like I'm just a support system. I'm a guide. And if I can help you reach your goals, then I'm going to be blessed regardless of the outcome, right? I had a parent tell me, when I started training their son, he was, socially awkward. He was uncoordinated and he was super tall for his age. Started training him. He got better in basketball. She said, Coach, he's making more friends in school because he's now like, he can hang with the athletes now. And I was like, that's super important to me, right? Like that's super important because kids need that social development in order to be successful in life. If you can't communicate, you can't talk to people, how can you expect to have a job or work on a team, right? Like basketball, it's a tool, but you need to have confidence in yourself. So, yeah, I teach all that stuff, even at elementary age. It's like, hey, we're learning this skill, but how does it apply to your natural life? Are you misbehaving to your mom, right? Like that stuff is important. Like I'm like a disciplinarian to support the parents. It's like, no, this is a privilege. You will not disrespect mom, like, or you will not train with Coach Jeffrey. Like, this is a consequence. I had a kid get suspended. I said, oh yeah, bro, like you're suspended from me too. But when you come back, we're gonna have a problem. like, we don't treat our parents this way. We don't break things. We don't misbehave in school and expect to be rewarded with sports. No, sir. And this is why I have kids that I've been training since they were 9 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old, and they're like 14, 15. They're graduating high school. And it's because I love all of my kids like they're my kids. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I mean, just what you were saying, it's a really important approach to have when you're, a guide, a coach, a mentor for kids. It's not just about, right, where those kids can take you for the next career. It's like, what can you really do for those kids? How can you serve them? How can you help, support them? And it's not, a lot of it's encouragement and letting them know that you love them no matter what, in terms of for whether they play basketball or not. But also, like you said, it's also giving them the discipline and accountability so that they can take that with them when they graduate, so they understand that like there are consequences to your actions, that basketball is a privilege, and it's a blessing to be able to play the game. How have you seen some of your athletes that you've trained since they were 4, 5, and 6, and now they're 14 and 15? I know for me, that's one of my favorite parts, is watching athletes grow. So can you share a little bit about some stories of some of the athletes that you've seen grow?
Yeah, so one of the ones that's really special to me, I started training these two sisters when they were in middle school. One was in the 8th grade, one was in the 6th grade. And the one in the 8th grade, older sister, she started having discipline problems in school, like on her team. And she got into it with another teammate, and the coach ended up kicking her off the team, right? So she had to sit out as a rising star her last year of high school, right? So she couldn't pursue college, and then her confidence was just destroyed. But I was still visiting, keeping in touch. providing gifts. Like I bought both of the sisters like a new pair of shoes for their birthdays because their dad isn't around. Like he hasn't been around. So, and they told me when they think of dad, they think of me sometimes, right? Because I reach out on their birthdays, right? Like I get them gifts, I send them flowers, blah blah blah. So the older sister, she sat me down and was like, "I want to apologize for failing you." And I was like, "What do you mean failing me?" She said, "I got kicked off the team and I can't play, and you spent all this time training me, but I didn't do anything with basketball." I said, "You're about to graduate high school. You're about to go to college. You're a sweet person. You care about other people. You're about to pursue a career, and we worked together on to create a short film movie, and you got experience working with me. What did you fail in? like where was the failure again?" So that was really special, and I encouraged her, and she cried. I was like, "Look, I care about you and your future." So that's pretty special.
Yeah, no, that's big. That's really important because that's what it's all about. At the end of the day, no
Yeah.
matter who you are, whether you're Michael Jordan, LeBron James, everyone hangs up their cleats, their shoes
Right.
eventually. And so those
Right.
skills, some of us are just blessed to play longer than others and work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And but at the end of the day, like those lessons that we learn from sports at the young age and an important age, whether we're teenage, elementary, those are the life lessons that kind of stick with us and help us guide us to become who we're supposed to be. And so as coaches, we have that privilege. And I'm curious, kind of to go back on a little bit of what you were talking about earlier on talking about like movements and teaching specific movements. Like as a
Mm-hmm.
PE teacher, I'm curious, how you help players, with the movement, because I know that for sports is like having a positive relationship with sports and, physical
Mm-hmm.
movement, like ends up making such a big impact on people later on. So I'm curious, how you kind of teach some of those movements, that are basketball specific.
Awesome. So I have a section. I broke my training sessions up into eight fundamental elements, and speed, agility, and quickness is one of those elements. And it's primarily built to focus on coordination. And the coordination, what a lot of parents think I'm trying to help them jump higher or run faster. It's really to help your mind and your body connect, right? Like repetitively working on a certain movement in PE can help a kid develop brain neurons. Like the neuroplasticity of their brain can be developed through exercise, right? So kids that don't really do physical activity as they're getting older are not being developed mentally as quickly as other kids, right? So having a kid work on their balance and coordination, like it builds other elements in their bodies, right? So we don't understand. Some people don't understand that it's more physiological than just skill. So if they can't hop on one leg, right? How can we expect them to jump 30 inches off the ground and land without tearing their knees up? So I'm saying if they have weakness in their limbs, how can we expect them to do these super athletic cuts in football and run through a wall? Like no, like if like I trained a guy today who's an adult. He wanted me to use basketball as a fitness class for him. So I trained him this morning, and as he was shooting, his shoulder would catch, and it would only extend probably like that far. He couldn't get into a full extension in his elbow. So all of his shots were short. They were short. And I said, bro, your shoulder isn't allowing you to shoot a full jump shot. He said, what do you mean? I said, when you extend your arm, your deltoid muscles catches and everything, all the power that you built in your squat and your jump left the moment your shoulder hit that point. You have poor range of motion in your rotator cuff. So next session, we have to work on that so that you will see, oh, I actually can shoot a real jump shot instead of the muscle constricting and then actually stopping you, right? Um, Squatting, like all the natural movements, lifting, right? Not lifting with your back, your shoulders being pronated forward, like throwing them back, like helps your spine, your posture, right? All of this stuff matters, and I'm frustrated with trainers that don't teach the physiology in training, right? Maybe they don't know. Maybe they just picked up a basketball and said, "Hey, I'm going to teach you drills," right? We want to teach you drills instead of teaching you how to maintain like physical activity for a long period of time, right? My physical therapist, she said to me, she said, Jeff, you need to stop hooping right now and let's work on your Achilles and your knee, because I had knee surgery before I went to Spain. She said, let's work on your Achilles and your knee. She said, how much cardio have you been doing lately? I said, about 15 minutes, every other day, something like that. She said, okay, how long is a game? I said, about an hour. She said, so you're only training with 15 minutes of cardio, but you're playing an hour. How does that make sense, Jeff? Like, you're asking your body to injure itself. So that chance, okay, yeah, I need to step up my duration of cardio so that when I'm playing an hour long or hour and a half, if overtime, my body is still strong. So just little things like that, we need to start thinking about it as from training perspective.
No, that's a really interesting point. So what advice would you have for the trainers and coaches that are listening to help, kind of develop that program? You touched on it a little bit, like part of it's speed, agility, and quickness, but, how do you kind of assess, range of motion issues, and then what kind of like, kind of, for lack of a better term, like drills and, activities and
Absolutely.
exercises do you kind of recommend in place for, certain athletes that need those certain range of motions?
So two things. One, I highly recommend trainers get a personal training certification, right? When I first started training, that was the first thing I did, and I separated myself from so many trainers that just pick up a basketball and teach drills, right? Anybody can look at drills on, drills on YouTube and Google and make the kid do the drill. But if you don't understand what the drill is trying to accomplish, you just make them do drills. So I say get a certification. It really helps the kid, and it helps you, it helps the parent, because you can educate the parent to reinforce the messages at home, right? Because you only see the kid maybe once or twice a week, but the parent sees them every day. So if they notice, and I train parents, it's like if they notice, hey, Coach Jeffrey said tuck that elbow in, like let's line it up, then they can speak to it when I'm not around. And then two, I would say choose a movement, any kind of skill, and then reverse engineer it. So if you need to play solid defense, of course you have to squat, and you just analyze, can they do certain things? Can they stay squatted with their arms up without their arms shaking? I tell people shaking in a muscle is instability and kind of weakness, right? So if you see muscle shaking, it's not strong enough to do that activity. So if you get into a quarter squat and your legs and knees are knocking together for after a few seconds, you need to do more strengthening for your quads and your calves and your hamstrings, right? So in order to step, like how many times can you step side to side? I say put two cones on the floor and have them slide back and forth for 20 seconds and gauge where they are. Like, it's all about assessment, and then you just build, incrementally build. For shooting, I have created a hand signal for a lot of the things in my program so that I can communicate from the bleachers, and I can send you that email. So I teach them the L technique for their shooting form. If you create an L with your arm, you're basically looking in your elbow. You extend through your elbow straight up, and then you follow through and flick. Yep. In the bleachers, I say, hey, your technique is off. Like, you need to line it up, right? L, extend, flick, follow through. I have a bunch of different signals. Dribbling, same thing. Hand on top of the ball out front. Hand on top, ball out front. And when you move, kids need to know that the ball is basically being pushed backwards because you're moving forward. Little things like that, the trainers need to speak to kids. Say, hey, put the ball out front as if you're walking your dog, right? If you're walking your dog, you're not dragging your dog behind you, right? No, sir. Right. So it's leading. The ball has to lead, and your body catches up to the ball, or it's going to hit your body and you're going to lose it, right? Mm-hmm. They need to know about angles. Angles are so important in basketball. 45-degree angle. They need to know what 45-degree is. Like, you force someone into a 45 to reduce their speed, or they're just going to go right around you. So break them down, like do zigzag drills. I start at the baseline, I zigzag to the free throw line, and then back, right? Just get into that habit. And then closeout drills, sprint and stop. dribbling stationary and then dribbling moving and then making moves stationary, making moves moving. It's all just stacking on top of each other, one after another. And combos are literally just one move stacked on top of another move. So if you can do a crossover and then try behind the back. So do the crossovers until you're confident and then add cross behind. Try it stationary and then try it moving. And then add a defender and then add a finish. That's 4 levels. Stationary, dynamic, which is you by yourself, add a defender and then make it live, game speed. So they have to apply that certain movement and say, hey, no. If you're not doing it right, go back to level 1. Let's stand here. Let's get that down. Okay, now we progress level 2. So that's how I see every skill, whether it's rebounding, working on getting into a squat, being physical, timing the ball off the rim. Physical timing. So if trainers learn to break down that skill, whatever it is, shooting, is start off in front of the rim, like 2 feet in front of the rim, single hand, up and over until you hit it nothing but net consistently, and then step back, and then you add both hands, and then you add a little jump, and then you step back, and then you move into it, and you add defense. Like that's literally how I do every single skill in my training program.
No, it's so important. The progressions and the process of like 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that's something that, last year when I first started training, I don't think I understood. I just understood level 3 and 4, and I wanted to teach that right away. So the first kids I started working with probably, unfortunately, had to bear through that. But, I'm guessing through process and time, you've kind of created your own sort of curriculum. And that's kind of what I'm in the process of is figuring out what is level 1. And level 1 for me, I figured out is honestly teaching things without a basketball. Kind of what you're talking about, like the movement of it instead of just going straight to the basketball. I'm kind of recognizing that, and it's patterned, and a lot of it is kind of that, the physical education, physical literacy, which is something I'm recognizing is really important as I get to work with different athletes all over the city of Los Angeles, because I recognize that those that have more access to better teachers and the clinics, camps, they have better skills and movement. But when I'm working in I get lower income areas that don't have the same access to teachers, they don't have the same motor skills, and those motor skills are huge in basketball. So
to that, so what I try to tell parents now is say, hey, your son cannot catch. He can't catch the ball, right? He can't catch with his left hand. He can't throw with his left hand. How do you expect him to be able to dribble? Use your left. He can't catch. So take a tennis ball and work on his hand-eye coordination. Throw it, let him catch it, overhand, underhand, and then throw it so he can run and catch it, and make him dribble with it. And you'll see his skills change. It's not that he don't know how to dribble. He can't catch. It's sometimes that simple, but we have to look past the skill of what that kid is to see what's really going on. Almost like a doctor. They say, hey, yeah, that's a symptom, that's a core issue. Let's go behind the curtain.
Yeah, no, 100%. It is about kind of addressing those needs in terms of, what each player needs, specifically that works best for them. And I'm curious, as we kind of entered kind of the fourth quarter of our conversation, I know, you're big on not only just physical movements, but just the mental side of the game and teamwork and communication and leadership. And in 10 years, what do you hope, that a player will remember from your trainings?
So it's one thing. So most of my program is like faith-based. So everything I teach is from a biblical perspective. It's not trying to hammer the Bible into kids, but it's telling them who they are before they step on the court. And one of the biblical lessons I like to teach is self-control. If you cannot control yourself, if you have no self-discipline, how can you expect to work with others, control others, help others if you can't even help, control, and work with yourself, right? So self-discipline is huge. Your routine, your commitment level. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, right? Coach Jeffrey doesn't tolerate you going back on your word. Now, if things change, then you communicate that change. And overall, that I just love them. If we only train one session, I love you like you're my child. If we train 30, it doesn't matter. I want you to have a safe space to be yourself and to grow. And you got that when you came into Coach Jeffrey's presence. Like you may experience hell outside of training. You may have a horrible home life, rough school, horrible relationships with your parents. But when you come train with Coach Jeffrey, all of that changes because you have an ally. And if my kids never make a team, they never make pro, never do any of that, they know that they had a great positive experience with somebody that actually cared for them. And my kids typically say those type of things.
Yeah, I love that. And that's the commitment that you have made for them. And that's, kind of
Right.
what we're really about with Bridging Impact, is bridging that impact that you had from, that sports had on you into the next generation, to teach them about self-control, self-discipline, and, all the motor skills and different topics that we touched on today. And, I know as well, when we talked a little bit before, that you also equip, other coaches and trainers to be able to do this themselves. Can you also talk about how you teach, coaches and trainers, to be able to do the same thing?
So there was a study done in 1996 that roughly 44 million youth throughout the United States participate in some kind of athletics. And 90% of those coaches that work with those youth don't have coaching or training education. So that's 400, man, that's over 400,000 kids that are just struggling, right? And it's like my philosophy is if I build up enough trainers and coaches to get a piece of what I know, they can help impact certain other kids that I can't reach. So I literally teach everything about my program to people. I believe that, I serve a God of abundance, so I don't have to compete with you for kids. I know there are plenty of kids that need what we all have to offer. So if I can help you reach your audience, then I'm doing my job and those kids are being impacted. You're making a living and we all win. Right? It's not me competing. I'm not competing against any trainer, any coach, any team. Right? I'm competing against the evils that are trying to kill our kids. So if I can help all of you learn what I learn, do what I do, teach how I teach, so you can impact a bunch of people, I'm going to do that, which is why my training facility is a training gym for trainers. So you can either train your kids in your program in my facility, or you can join my team and we train my kids together. So I'm just trying to change the world, man. And this is the best way I can, helping trainers build young men and women and even non-binary kids. It doesn't matter. Your job as a protector, as an influencer and a leader is to protect and change the lives of these kids using sports. So that's what I'm going to do until I croak.
I love that. I love that mission. We definitely share that. And I'm so grateful that we found each other on Instagram and we're able to find the time. And I'm really inspired from this conversation. I want to do exactly what you're doing here. And I love that you want to do it in a way that's, you don't want to compete, right? You don't want to just, trainer X, I'm better than you, you're taking away, player Y from me. And so I think that's probably one of my favorite parts about this conversation, is that we all can win. And I appreciate the message and the mission and coming on. Where can people, because I know you have, speakings, you have an Instagram, and you got, some books and resources out there. So where can people, find you and your resources?
Absolutely. So you can go to trainedbyjeff.com. That's my website. You can contact me if you need me to speak, or I can send my book to you. It's also on Amazon at Chasing Pro, Thinking Beyond Impossibility. And it talks about my experience tearing my patella tendon right before I was supposed to go to Spain my rookie year, and still fighting through therapy and people telling me I'm too old and all that. So that's really encouraging. I'm on Instagram at I am just Jeff, J-U-S, Jeff. Just reach out. I'm very open and I love sharing my knowledge. I don't harbor information because I know that you're not me. You don't have my experience, so we can build from each other. We can share. There's so many kids in the world. Let's reach all of them.
Let's reach all of them. I love that so much. Thanks so much for your time today, Jeff.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts, and this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.